Tatanast ata, sizi hal Eagletail ata. Good day, I'm from the Tsuut'ina Nation. My name is Hal Eagletail, and I'm a cultural consultant with regards to helping many industries, interpret Northern Plains cultural identity, history, evolution. Being a preserver of cultural identity, spiritual practice, language enhancement, immersion is something that I hold the greatest value of what I do. But equal to that is the education to the non-native community that we try to immerse the special relationship that all Indigenous nations in Canada have to the land. And in Canada, there's over 600 native bands, and we all belong to one of 11 language groups. So my language group is known as Dene, and we stretch from Alaska down to Mexico. We had a great separation that happened a few thousand years ago, crossing a frozen body of water, horn sticking out of the ice. The child cried for it. The grandmother took out her stone axe to calm the crying child. She started chipping away at this horn, not realizing that this horn in our story was attached to a monster's head sleeping under the ice, known as Tusclana. And the vibration of the grandmother chipping at its horn woke up this Tusclana. It stood up, busting the ice and separating our people. So to the north, we're known as the Dene, Chippewa, Slavey, Carrier, Dogrib. We found a Dene-speaking language group in Russia known as the Ket. And to the south, we're known as the Navajo, Apache, Hupa. And our language actually has a dialect directly from the Aztec language. So obviously our migration evolved from South America as opposed to the Bering Strait theory of the land bridge. But definitely one of our historical interpretations of this horn is similar to the Dene up north, the Dene Ta, which is known as Assumption, Alberta, just on the border of Northwest Territories in Alberta. They have the same story, except them it was an elk horn with a frozen carcass of an elk embedded in the ice, and the weight of the people and the chipping from the grandmother cracked the ice and busted the ice. And our relatives to the south, the Navajo, have the same story, except them they say it was a buffalo horn, and the same results happened, the cracking of the ice. I guess the difference in horn really is insignificant, other than the moral of the story is the same in all of our cultures. And the moral is that in life, the man always walks in front of the woman, except on ice. No, I'm just teasing. Never spoil the child. Never give the crying child, everything their heart's content. So that is one of our customs. Never spoil the children. So this little evolution of how we evolved has another story of separation to it, and this happened probably, well, let's go back a little bit further, about 3,500 years ago. This great event was gifted to the Dene people of a spiritual water protecting bundle known as the Beaver Bundle. It was given to the Dene people as a protector for all the Dene people, and it has every water animal, every water bird spirit in this bundle. And it wasn't a man-made bundle. It was given to us by the supernatural powers that existed at that time. And this bundle is in the possession of my family that we've had and we've been taken care of for the last 3,500 years. It's gone underground during the policy of government to eradicate our cultural practice and spiritual practice. We thank our ancestors for taking these ceremonies deep into the wilderness, away from the prying eyes of the Indian agents. And this is how our cultural identity and spiritual practice survives to this day. So moving a little fast forwarding, a second separation occurred just along the boundary of what is now British Columbia and Alberta at a place called Fort St. John. And the Fort St. John Dene actually have the closest language dialect to us in Tsuut'ina. There was a dog that went into the leader's teepee and ate its dry meat off the racks. And the leader killed the dog, big family fight happened, and we actually moved away from our relatives along the mountain ranges into the prairies, into the plains. And we brought with us the beaver bundle. And we encountered the Blackfoot Confederacy, part of the Algonquin language group that evolved here probably maybe 10,000 years ago. And this original area was inhabited by the Kootenai native. But the Blackfoot Confederacy pushed them into what is now the interior of British Columbia. So when we came into Blackfoot territory, which basically stretches from the North Saskatchewan River, which is located where West Edmonton Mall is. Oh yeah, no, Edmonton. The kids like that one. And as far south as the Yellowstone River, which is now Montana, USA, from the Rocky Mountains to the Cypress Hills in Saskatchewan. Now, it's important to note that the Cypress Hills was the only place of an abundance of pine spruce tree that everyone had access to. The Assiniboines, the Ross Venture, the Sioux, the Cree, the Blackfoot, because of that abundance of pine tree for the teepee lodge poles, travois poles. It was all prairie right up to the mountains, nothing but just prairie going right to the mountain slopes. So that was the eastern boundary. Now, when we came in, immediately Blackfoots tried to push us out, wage a war on us. But our Tsuut'ina were known for their guerrilla warfare tactics. We never ran away from a fight. One of the customs that we used to practice was we would peg ourselves to the ground in battle. So we would put a peg in the ground, tie a rawhide to it, tie that rawhide to our ankle. And as the enemy came over the hill and seen all these warriors pegged to the ground, knowing that they're not going to run away from a fight, this invoked a encouraging effect. And we became allies with the Blackfoot, and they shared their knowledge of plains living, harvesting, animal harvest, medicine harvest, and we learned the ways of teepee culture. And we evolved with the Blackfoot people in this area as allies. So much so that we actually signed Treaty Number 7 in 1877 at the Blackfoot Crossing, about an hour's drive east of Calgary. So as we signed this great peace, we were given land adjacent to the Blackfoot people. But throughout that whole process of negotiating the treaties, it was imperative, which is still a practice today, to ask the natural laws for guidance in whether such a decision should be rendered to sign peace. A year before the treaties came to southern Alberta, Treaty 7, in 1876, there was this great battle that occurred in what is now known as the Grassy Hills, or the Little Bighorn of Montana. And it was the 7th Cavalry against one of the great war chiefs of the Huckpukpa Sioux, known as Sitting Bull. And he was part of the Lakota dialect. And there's 3 dialects. There's Lakota, there's Dakota, and then there's Nakota. But just recently, we found a dialect in Japan, Toyota. No, I'm just teasing. So, anyways, this exchange that happened, this great battle that happened, they were successful in defeating the 7th Cavalry, and then he went basically on the run from the U.S. Cavalry at that time, Sitting Bull. And there were Cheyenne there, Paiutes, Blackfoots. There were some Tsuut'ina warriors in that battle, and Arapaho, and of course the mighty Sioux Nation. So they kind of scattered. Sitting Bull came up to Canada and sought support from our Southern Alberta chiefs. And he told our chiefs at that time, there's enough power here in warrior strength to push all the settlers back. There's enough power here with our numbers. But our chiefs at the time, or I should say leaders, I don't like to use the word chief, that's an Indian Act term, and I'll explain why. The leadership interpreted that peace is coming. Our enemies and the people of the eastern boundaries, traditional territories, we're talking of peace treaties being signed. In Canada, the white mother wants to make peace, and the white mother we interpreted as the queen. The white father in the United States we interpreted as the president wants to make war. Up here in Canada, we have no reason to fight because this peace is coming. So we replenished Sitting Bull's people and himself with horses, food stores to make their trek back into the States because they were forced back by the Canadian government at the time. So we replenished their horses and food stores. And Sitting Bull wanted to gift the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina people, honors. He wanted to pay for this cooperation of generosity. So he left us two societies. And society basically is a way of interpreting how are we going to use the approachment or the encroachment and the evolution of a new way of life. How can we understand and educate ourselves to understand these new ways that are changing our people's lifestyle? So I'll give you an example. Before the horse came, we had the dog society. The dog was the main form of transportation, dog travelways, hunting, gathering. And then the horse came. And in the late 1700s, we're trying to figure out, well, how can we best use this new evolution of horse spirit? So we made the horse society to help us educate and understand and find ways to cope with this new way of life. And then the redcoats came. So we made the Red Coat Society. How are we going to best understand the new way of life that's coming with the existence of the European people? And in our area here in southern Alberta, it's only been 300 years that we've had contact with the European people. Just 300 years. And 500 years for our relatives in eastern Canada. That's why the eastern Canadian natives speak better English. Oh yeah. But definitely, this is one of our main reasons why our societies are still so strong today. Our practices, our language, our cultural, spiritual ceremonies are still very epically proud and strong today. So he gave us two societies. One we call Parted Hair, which was a warrior society of the camp. And we call them dog soldiers. They're known as cowboy society in our evolution. And then we call them Tuscuna. And Tuscuna is a reference to those dog soldiers in our language. We have our own police service here in Tsuut'ina Nation, and we call them Tuscuna. That's the name of our police force. And the second society that was gifted to us was the tall hat, the flow back headdress of the Sioux people. Now, our headdresses were actually all straight up, right around the whole circumference of the head. The feathers went straight up. So when the Sioux gave us their war bonnet, transferred, they said you can have the songs, the paints, and the transfer however you deem people earned or acquire the rights for that headdress transfer. And we gave the straight up to our woman, and the man wears the flow back. So this is how the Sioux gave us the gifts of these two societies after we replenished their horse and food stores before they were forced back into the United States. So the Sioux headdress became a symbol, especially from Hollywood and stereotype of the indigenous people. And I'm not saddened, but I do question. We as Canadian indigenous people have picked up this imagery and adopted it like it was part of our traditional cultural evolution. When you go to the West Coast and you see the totem culture, you'll see a teepee outside the longhouse. When you go to Eastern Canada, you'll see the wigwam and the fortification structures. Then you'll see a teepee beside their structures. And then you'll see the chiefs of these different provinces wearing headdress that, I don't know, maybe they captured one in their history, gives them the rights to wear it. Maybe they were transferred these rights sometime throughout the last 300 years. I don't know. But they should tell the story of how and why they wear the headdress. Every cultural, geographical location of our indigenous people all have their traditional headdresses anyways. Be proud of your culture. Be proud of your headdress. Don't take the stereotype of the Hollywood Indian headdress teepee culture that we're just narrating a false identity. Be proud of your cultural interpretation, because geographically our homes are a reflection of our environment. And because the West Coast didn't have to hunt the buffalo, they built these longhouses. And in the Eastern Canada, fortification culture and agriculture is a thriving reflection of their geographical environment. The igloo culture of the ice of the Inuit, you know, they had to adapt to their environment. The wigwam, the wikiups, the hogans, all of these different home styles is a reflection of our geographical area, our food, our clothing. So I always try to interpret that if you go across Canada from west to east coast or vice versa, you'll go through a different geographical, cultural, clothing, food, history that we should be proud of. And we should be really showcasing our identities instead of having to, pick up these imageries that people will identify us as native people when you travel the world. So the teepee culture was meant to follow the buffalo herds. We needed a mobile home. So I guess you can say the teepee is the first mobile home of the prairies that followed the buffalo herds. And the teepee was designed by, it must have been a genius, because it's cool in the summer by lifting up the skirt of the teepee and the airflow and the funneling effect of the pyramid style structure. In the winter, we keep because of its structure, keep the heat low, and we have these dew cloth, kind of like keeps the cold out. The ear poles, they close or open the direction of the wind so that the smoke goes out properly. And it was so ingenious that he made it circular. This way his wife will never corner him. I'm just teasing. But this is the teepee cultural way of following the buffalo herds. And they went as far north as the Grand Prairies, which we call the Northern Plains, the Central Plains, which is the tip of Alberta into Montana, into Idaho, Oklahoma, Colorado, and then the southern plains as far south as Texas and Oklahoma. So these great herds of buffaloes in the millions, we would follow their migration and live off the sustenance it gave us. And the buffalo hunt itself was a great way of unification and cooperation. All the members of the nation, from the warriors to the young men to the ladies to the elders, everyone played a role in that great hunt, and we all benefited from its success and the harvest and the unity of working together. If we look at, fast forward to today's day and age, the hunt is what's lacking in our nations. The hunt today is economic development. It's just a different scenario from our ancestors that had to work together collectively to benefit from the harvest of unity and cooperation. Well, today we all need to help develop and nurture our dreams and our goals and our businesses. And our leaders need to hear the people's wishes so that they can be successful in today's day and age hunt. And that's business development. So we're just translating how our ancestors hunted together to today's day and age. And this is something that doesn't really happen too effectively or efficiently. So going back to treaty, when we asked for the earth, we asked Mother Earth for guidance. And the story that I remember in the oral histories that is interpreted to us at a young age growing up, one in particular talked about how before we signed Treaty 7, one of the war chiefs of the Stoney Nakoda, the Iahe Nakoda, there was 3 chiefs. There was Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley. At that time, we all had what we call medicine warrior powers, spirit powers to connect with all living things. We still have that today. It's been diluted through the different traumas of residential school, day school, all that sort of other stuff. But they were so pure back then that Bearspaw said, "Put my teepee by itself on the prairie and I'll ask for guidance." And he fasted for a sign and a message from the living things. And when he came out of his fast 4 days later, he told the other leaders, he said, "If we sign this treaty, we'll have peace for a long time. If we don't sign it, we'll have a very short peace. But if we do decide to sign it, we have to show these non-native people our powers, what we're capable of." So it was decided by the leaders, and how we interpreted our leaders was clan leaders. In our nation, there's almost, 30 clans, and everyone had a spokesperson. We call them big bellies. The big belly of the clan would be the spokesperson for everybody. But government didn't want to deal with 30 clan leaders, so they said, pick one leader that will represent all of you, and we'll call him chief. That's a government word, chief. So this is how this term chief come about. Very misdirected interpretation, in my opinion. So Bearspaw told the other leaders, we have to show them our power. So Lieutenant Laird, who was a part of the government's representatives, Colonel MacLeod was the main negotiator. The interpreter's name was Jerry Potts. So Lieutenant Laird took a small contingent of constables from Northwest Mounted Police overlooking the Blackfoot Crossing where they signed treaty. with Bear's Paw. Bear's Paw said, we have to show you our powers. We have to show you what we're capable of as human beings and our connection with all living things. He told one of the constables, load your gun, shoot me. So he took his time, and he actually had to get a lot of coaxing from his superiors, because this could start war and affect the peace process. So finally, Lieutenant Laird said, well, he wants to die, no harming this peace process. He's trying to demonstrate something that is of his own fault. So the constable loaded his gun, pointed it at Bear's Paw, and when he pulled the trigger, there was no fire. Bear's Paw said, point it in the air and try, and he did, and it fired. He said, load it up again. Pointed at me, pulled the trigger, and he did that again. Second time, no fire. So he put it up in the air again, and here it fired. There was nothing wrong with his rifle. Bear's Paw said, bring that gun. He grabbed his gun, he put it he put it over his shoulders like this. Praying. And as he's praying, he's bending his arms, bending that gun. Takes it off his neck, gives it to those constables and those Northwest Mounted Police officers, and they were freaking out. They couldn't unbend it. They couldn't figure out how this guy, affected their firearm. He said, bring that gun, and he put it under his knee. He started praying. Then he started straightening it out. Then he went like that, straightened it right out. And he gave it to that soldier. He said, fire it. And it fired. There's nothing wrong with it. No misfire, nothing. He said, that's nothing. Give me that gun. And he put it on the ground. And then he licked his finger. Then he put his finger in the barrel of that gun. He started praying. And as he's praying, he's pulling his finger down the barrel of that gun, splitting open the metal with his finger. Everyone's freaking out. Then he says, bring me that gun. He licks his thumb. He starts pushing that metal back. Fixed it. Gave it to the soldier, said, fire it. And it fired. No misfire, nothing. Now, this is the oral stories that we're told, that's passed down from one generation to the next. I heard this as a child, and I used to think, what a extraordinary tale. Kind of a tall tale, kind of a myth, in my opinion, Years later, I'm doing research in the archives. I come across a box of letters from Treaty 7 signing. I start getting this warm feeling of, am I really reading what I'm seeing? Here it was a letter from one of those soldiers that witnessed this. And he wrote back east. His first comment was, we can't do a deal with these red devils. That's what they used to call us, the red devils. They practice ultimate black magic, ultimate sorcery. We can't trust them. Then he started talking about this chief bending that gun on his neck. Then he started talking about, more extraordinarily, he ripped the barrel of that gun open with his finger. We can't trust them. We can't do a deal with them. Right in that instant, right at that exact moment, I was never so proud to be a Native person. Never. That just reinforced our connection with all living things. And this is something we still practice today. One thing has been lost in history, not totally lost, but forgotten. The natural laws are living in harmony with all living things. Every living entity has a spirit, and they have a language. And when they talk, from the grass to the sky, to the trees, to the animals, to the birds, we actually sing in the language of all living things. That's why we sing the way we do as Native people. We're singing in the language of Mother Earth. So in our ceremony, when we're asking for guidance from the eagle spirit, buffalo, bear, thunderbird, whatever, we'll sing their song. And we'll sing in the language that they understand. And this is how we call them into ceremony. Even when I mow the lawn, I'll put tobacco down. And I'll say a little prayer, and I'll sing that earth song. And I'll ask for forgiveness from the grass spirit, and I'll say, forgive me for cutting you, but we got bylaws in the society we live today. Someone once asked me, what's the difference between colonization and the traditional ways? I said, traditional is knowing the plants and the medicines and the powers of healing. One of our greatest powerful cancer medicines is dandelion. Dandelion that grows in abundance everywhere. Colonization is putting a budget in the city budget to eradicate them, to get rid of them. How idiotic is that? Destroying one of the most powerful cancer medicines because they're a nuisance, they're a weed, just the interpret. That's colonization. How do we fix or balance things? Well, use that city budget to eradicate dandelions, and instead of putting pesticide on them, use that money to harvest them. Harvest them. They don't last very long. They're in growth probably for about a month and a half at the most. Have the school children, have the youth centers, have the correction institutes harvest this powerful cancer medicine. This is how we work together. This is what reconciliation can be about. So to get the natural laws, one thing that isn't included or should be parallel to it is the divine laws. So you have your natural law, but you have your divine law that overlap each other. We're forgetting about the divine laws in society. This is why we have in misinterpretations of what leadership should be about. It's not about men leading. It's about equality for everyone. Women played an equal role in our society. Two-spirited people played an equal role. Disability, and I don't like to use the word disability, it's different ability. And children, elders, all had an equal role in our society. When you look at two-spirited, there would be a man dressed up as a woman, screaming and making a lot of noise in the teepee beside the lady actually giving birth. This is his power to attract an evil spirit trying to make its way to that birth site. It's like a mother sparrow pretending it has a broken wing flittering on the ground when the lynx is walking by, as a diversion away from her babies up in the nest. That is the two-spirited gift. And we had a reverence for them, a place in our society for them. Woman, we could not have our most powerful sacred ceremony, Sundance, without the vow of a woman feeding that center tree, buffalo tongue. Cannot happen without that woman. When we would cross a lake or we would cross a big river, it was the women that kept the song for a safe crossing passage. We wouldn't be able to cross without that woman's guidance. When the pandemic hit, a lot of people were against vaccinating. Myself, Personally, I'm an anti-vaxxer. I got 4 aunties vaccinated. We all need aunties in our lives. Antibiotics, antidepressants, I don't know. But anyways, the women of Treaty 6 were told by the natural laws and the divine laws to include the medicine chest in the treaty negotiation, because the medicine chest ensured that we'll share the land with the newcomers to the depth of a plow so that they can plant their harvest and survive. And in return, we'll get certain rights. It was the women of Treaty 6 that insisted they add the medicine chest, because when they got the vision from Mother Earth and all living things, government needs to take care of us during hard times, pandemic times, times of hardship. So they included that. Lo and behold, because government is giving the native people health care coverage with the medicine chest, where does it leave all of the rest of Canadian society? If we're going to give them to the natives, we've got to give it to ourselves. You got to thank the women of Treaty 6 for giving us all universal health care in Canada. Honor them. Acknowledge that. That's why when the vaccines came out, I got vaccinated right away, to honor that women's vision of that medicine chest. They didn't just make it up. It was put there for a reason. It helped us during the smallpox epidemic, during tuberculosis, all of these sicknesses. We've been exposed to pandemics since the first Europeans came on the shores 500 years ago. And when you look at that first exchange of contact, the European people were lost. And it's in their own history books. They're looking for a passage to India. And they drifted. They were starving. They were dressed in rags. What did our people do on first contact? It wasn't to wipe them out, kill them off. We lined them up. We fed them. We clothed them. We helped them survive. Gave them life again. So when you think of that first lineup of Europeans off our shores 500 years ago, in retrospect, that's the America's first welfare line. So the historical traumas that affected our indigenous people today. Trauma means, literally, the root word of it means wound. Trauma means wound. And our people have to go back to the original wound and close it up and forgive what happened in order to not keep looking back at those events, tragic events. Could have happened as a young child. I was in residential school for 5 years. I went through all these abuses. And alcohol, the word alcohol is Arabic, and it literally means soul eater. That's what alcohol means, soul eater. Even the design of the name for alcohol depicts a negative connotation. Why would we even want that soul eater in our body? So if you don't get rid of the traumas, alcohol is just a trigger. And how do you get rid of these traumas? Well, you have to visualize going back to its original experience. Very hurtful, definitely. But you have to forgive the person that done it to you. If you don't forgive them, you're going to go through a life of one of the most evilest, ugliest spirits that plague not just the native people, but all people. And that's self-pity. Self-pity is just turning everything inward on yourself. I'm dirty. I'm not wanted. I'm not loved. Why am I even here? This self-pity evil is the one that plagues every single homeless person that has addiction in any city. You go to any one of them, they all have that inward self-pity on themselves. And their escape is these addictions. And there's many addictions. There's alcohol, there's the drugs, hard drugs. Cialis is a hard drug. Oh yeah, but all of these things that plague our people can be overcome as long as you have a cultural foundation, spiritual foundation. AA 12-step program was designed by an indigenous person. One of the 12 steps was designed by a native person that sat on this design committee. That's why it's so spiritual. That's why AA has all of these spirituality connections. It was the help of that native person helping design the 12 steps. So when I go to the Poundmaker Treatment Center in St. Albert, Alberta, I go up there to run Sweat Lodge, and I go up to help do ceremonies. Talking with the director, Brad Cardinal, even though the clients are exposed to spiritual practice and ceremony in that treatment center, it has an overwhelming healing effect to them. It's when they leave that they're going back into the same trigger circles if that existence of that follow-up of spiritual practice is not there. Then they have these relapses. We need to have a follow-up when our people leave these centers of healing. My late parents brought us up in a very strong spiritual way, whether it was a Catholic or a traditional practice. And when they left this world, their home was vacant. We tried to get my nephews and nieces to move in, but they all didn't have they had their own ideas. So my daughter, Stephanie Eagletail, she was going through her addiction demons and child and family issues, and these are all just the same historical traumas that plague our people. She overcame that by turning this home into what we call a healing home, a place where people can continue practicing their traditional spiritual ceremonies. And in this home, we just got it incorporated last year. And just last fall or last August, I was talking with Minister Wilson of the Alberta Indigenous Relations Minister. And I told Minister Wilson, we're turning my late parents' house into a healing home for the holistic process, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. And a place for us to practice and maintain our cultural, spiritual, ceremonial practices. Sundance prep, Sundance singing, night lodges, sweat lodges, medicine picking, herbal treatment. And he said, if you can get this thing going as a pilot, we'll see how we can fund this. And imagine the 360 turnaround in history where government's trying to oppress and to assimilate native spiritual practice and culture. Imagine us funding it. And if it's successful, can we have a healing home on all the First Nations in Alberta, all of the big cities, maybe all the provinces? Then our people have a place to go and continue their healing when they leave these treatment centers. So that's what we've done. We've created the Eagletail House Society in honor of my late parents' upbringing and teaching us these traditional values. My late father was very adamant to respect all forms of religious belief. when they were building South Health Campus Hospital here in Calgary, they got all the different denominations to come in and bless the chapel of this hospital, this newly built hospital. All the denominations were there. He was asked to come and give the traditional native blessing. He was the last to go. And after all the denominations blessed that site, he got up and he said, when I look out of everyone's way of prayer, it reminds me of a teepee without its covers. Every pole represent every religious belief on earth. And every pole goes straight up to Creator. And just like those poles touch, all of our beliefs are similar, that we want to be good people, humble people. So we never question what makes a person humble, because their prayers continue straight up to Creator. And on the way back, I said, Dad, who's those poles on the ears? Because they don't actually touch the rest of the teepee. And without hesitation, he said, that's business and government. Because business and government and those poles on the ears are meant to protect the teepee from smoking. So if business and government ain't doing their job, then we're all up in smoke. This analogy was overwhelmingly interpreted by the administrative staff of the South Health Campus Hospital. So powerful that they actually asked the family if they can immortalize this analogy, which the family allowed. So if you go to South Health Campus Hospital today, you'll see this analogy right beside the chapel on how every religious belief we need to honor. Creator gives us an example 24/7 that in spirit world, we're all equal. There's no such thing as color, race, language barriers, cultural barriers. We're all equal in spirit world. And this example he gives us 24/7 is that we all, every one of us human beings on Mother Earth, all have the same color shadow. We all have the same color shadow. And because of this example, this is how it is in spirit world. So I'm looking forward to the Eagletail Healing Home becoming the pilot that'll lead to healing homes of our cultural preservation, because it's very important. Like I said at the beginning, we come from different geographical environments. And in every geographical environment, we all have very similar traditions, just different customs. We may all have sweat lodge, just different practices on conducting. We may all have sunrise ceremonies. We all use sage, we all use sweetgrass, we all use cedar, we all use tobacco. Those are our four main sacred medicines universally known in Turtle Island. Before past National Chief Perry Bellegarde left office, I was working with him on a reconciliation project with WestJet, and we sent all the Treaty 7 chiefs to London on their inaugural flight of their new Dreamliner. And as part of this Treaty 7 chief entourage, we actually took a picture of the chiefs walking across Abbey Row. You know how the Beatles' famous album cover, walking across Abbey Row? They took a picture with all their headdresses. And that picture actually went viral, and there's a big photo of it in Heathrow Airport in London. So as soon as you land, you walk through, you see this big picture of the Treaty 7 chiefs. That's reconciliation. And WestJet took on the leadership role to do that through the efforts of Perry introducing him to myself and the cultural consultant work I do for different industry companies, whatever. So Prince Charles invited Perry to come and plant 4 of those sacred medicines in his garden in London. So tobacco, cedar, sage, and sweetgrass. Perry went and planted those seeds of these sacred medicines in Prince Charles' garden. And I jokingly told Chief Bellegarde, you should have planted that newly legalized plant that they legalized in Canada in his garden as well. It's always a part of our most powerful healing medicines is humor. So I'm just going to conclude here. I worked 3 years for Alberta Health Services as a traditional wellness counselor. So I would go into hospitals, I would provide herbal treatments, spiritual guidance, ceremony, smudge aromatherapy to patients of all walks of life. It wasn't segregated just to Indigenous people. And I found out some really powerful other medicine techniques of the world working there. The belief in this tobacco, the belief in the medicine is only 30% of the actual medicine that heals. 70% comes from your belief in it. That is the healing power, and that's the common denominator to other nations on Mother Earth that go back to their society calls it alternative medicine. I call it original medicine. The power of our thought. We all have the gift to heal ourselves. Every single one of us are gifted with healing ourselves. Our young people today are misdiagnosed with anxiety disorder, depression disorder, but we know they're gifted. Spirit's constantly trying to get through to them. So we put them in ceremony to help calm their mind and help identify with their gifts. Society, Western medicine will give them suppression pills, antidepressants to try to suppress these gifts, not knowing and misdiagnosing it as severe anxiety or some type of acronym. And this is where our cultures need to work together. This is where our knowledge of natural laws can help benefit society today. When you look at the medicines in Western medicine evolution, 65% of what we get out of the pharmacy came from indigenous herbal treatments. 65%. And we're constantly being ripped off. The most recent theft was acetaminophen, willow bark. Before that was echinacea. And this old medicine man in Rosebud Reserve, South Dakota, shared the knowledge of echinacea in a sweat lodge with a doctor that came into the sweat. And this doctor was questioning and asking questions of, what's this medicine and that you're using on the stones? And he shared it. He was welcoming and he was very open to share this knowledge. So this doctor took this echinacea knowledge to a pharmaceutical company. Today's a billionaire. The pharmaceutical company made billions. The medicine man still living in poverty in that shack on the reserve. We're our own worst enemy as Native people. We say, don't share that. Don't share that knowledge. What we need to do is we need to evolve how the Chinese cultures evolved for the last 5,000 years. So much so that they still practice their herbal treatment and they sell it in the stores in Chinatown. You go down there and buy the herbal shops. Get all the medicines you need. All the medicines that you need to heal yourself. They made an economy out of it, but they also preserved it. Why can't we have our own native medicine shops for ourselves? So this is where the evolution of how we need to evolve needs to go. We need to stop being our worst enemy. We need to stop saying a tobacco is all the payment you need to pay for your knowledge. You know, the richest people in our history was the medicine people. They were gifted horses, rifles, knives, pelts, everything for their spiritual healing. The poorest person in the community was the chief, the big bellies. We base our wealth on how much we give out not how much we accumulate in material wealth. This is why governments banned a lot of our ceremonies. They couldn't fathom us giving away material wealth through our giveaway, potlatch, all of these things. That's colonialism thinking. What did we have before the European people came? We had the most sophisticated, intricate free trade from North to South America. We have words for alligators from the Everglades in our language. This is how the free trade educated us. When the European people came, they basically just stole our free trade economy and put their own monetary value to it, rather than the barter value that we used to rely on. So what do we do today? We need to reactivate our free trade amongst our nations and our people. And this is what government is afraid we're going to get smart on. We're going to utilize the treaty rights we have. When we trade from one nation to the next, there's no taxes involved. If we can trade a commodity from one nation to the next and give the consumer a benefit of a lower price because of that, then we corner the economy. See, right now, when we get our paychecks in our native communities, the first thing we do is go off reserve to the nearest town or city and purchase our goods and services. We spend all our money off the reserve. Imagine if we did it right and we're able to have nation-to-nation free trade activated again. Every nation should take an inventory of their nation. What can they bring to the table? We have a lot of buffalo on our reserve. We have a lot of agriculture. We have a location. So if we do it right, everyone from the city of Calgary will be running to Satina to get a cheaper rate of goods and services. Everyone from those small towns, those isolated nations, will be running to those isolated nations to get a cheaper rate of goods and services. That's what government's afraid of. That's what government doesn't want us to evolve and to take advantage of. So what is preventing us from doing this? Our own selfish interests as colonialized individual leaderships in our communities. We're too obsessed with greed and corruption. We need a Messiah to bring us out of this bondage. Personally, I think this Messiah is going to be a woman, because the woman's spirit is the foundation of our homes. If our homes are weak, it's because the woman's weak. If the woman's strong, the home is strong. And they were always the caretakers. And this is what we need. We need a Messiah to bring us out of bondage. Thank you.